Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new video, and welcome to the penultimate wet track guide here inside F125. Yes, we're back today here at the reverse Silverstone layout. I would argue out of the three reverse circuits, it's by far and away the easiest one, but still as a general racetrack inside F125, it is a very, very tough challenge, especially in the wet conditions. Of course, if you missed out on the video that went live from Austria a couple of days ago, I would highly recommend going back and checking it out. But yeah, obviously, if you're new to this series and you don't know what this is about, I basically go through, I provide you with a race-ready wet setup inside F125. I talk you around the circuit, where your braking markers should be, what gears you want to be using, and then last but not least, I leave you with a hot lap. Of course, as always, timestamps will be linked down in the description below if you just want to head to a certain part of this video. A massive thank you to everybody for their continued support as well. We're getting closer and closer to 15,000 subscribers as well. So yeah, if these videos do help you out, please do consider clicking that like button and helping us get one step closer. But yeah, without further ado though, let's head out onto the circuit. High speed, high risk, high reward. It's Silverstone as always, but even more risk this way round and in these conditions. Well, even in the wet conditions, the final two corners here at Silverstone are completely flat out, so this is kind of the important turn to get yourself up steady for a run. Third gear on the exit, and then once you get up through fourth and fifth, that's when you want to be getting on the loud pedal. Like I said, these final two corners completely flat out. Just be careful that you attack a lot of curb on the way in and don't run too wide on the way out. In towards turn one though, you're going to be up in 7th gear there. You want to be braking just before the end of this curbing on the outside. Bring it down 1 and 2 gears there. Be careful to avoid the sausage curb. And then you are just slowly trying to scroll off speed in through turn 2 there. Bring it all the way down to 2nd. Again, try to get as close to that inside sausage curb as you can. Attack the curbing through the second part there. Short shift back up to 3rd, and then again attack the curb on the exit. Don't use that curbing on the outside though, and then once you're up through 4th gear, that is when you want to get your foot to the floor. Up in towards turn 4 though, braking, I've just missed it completely. You want to be braking just as you go over the top of kind of this extra bit of curbing on the outside there. Of course, normally that's to, you know, give you a little bit of extra space through the exit at the end of the hanger straight. But yeah, this way around, it just gives you a good healthy marker ready for this corner. You're going to be up in 5th gear on the way in, braking, like we said, just at the 50-meter board, but you want to bring it down 1, maybe 2 gears to try and get the weight through the front end there. Try to go for a late apex, but try to get on the loud pedal as early as you possibly can there. You can use the exit curb on the outside, but be very, very careful of the gravel then. As we make our way back up the hanger straight, obviously all the way up in 7th gear once again. The first part is completely flat out, but you immediately want to brake just past the 100-meter board into the second part there. Down to 4th gear, attack the apex curb as best as you can, leave it in 4th through this next one as well, and then just as you get on the exit, you want to go up through 5th there. Attack that curb on the exit as well, up through 6th and 7th gear, but the final two corners through there are completely flat out. The old turn 1 there, you want to go down 1 gear just at the 50-meter board, just nudge the brake a little bit, try and get the weight over the front, and then once more you're going to be completely flat out on what is normally now a very different DRS zone around this circuit. In towards Luffield, you want to brake just at the start of the gravel on the outside there. From 7th gear, you want to bring the car all the way down to 3rd. Be careful that it doesn't under-rotate too much through the first part of the corner. Hug the apex as best as you can. In fact, then bring it slightly over before you flick it through the right-hander. Again, try to hug the apex on the exit. It is a corner that opens out though, so you can get on the throttle really nice and early. And then we make our way up into what is probably the most difficult corner of the entire lap. A slight blend of throttle. You can just lift off through the first part. Make sure you get the car nice and wide, braking at about 180 meters out, and then you want to get all the way down to 3rd gear. Attack the first curb. Be very, very careful though as you try and get on the throttle through the transition, and then again try to attack the second curb. I like to square up this corner a little bit more than the AI do. They always get great traction though at that final, real traction zone of the lap. And then through these final two corners, avoid the first curb on the inside, but really attack the second one once again. Like I said, avoid the grass on the outside, and that is going to be a lap of Silverstone reverse. Like I said, it's a rather tricky circuit. It is high commitment, but kind of once you get it all figured out, it's actually not that difficult. It's just a really, really odd track I find on this game of you can only find so much, like, the harder you push, it feels like sometimes you can't find any more time. It's very, very easy to overdrive the car here and actually cost yourself some lap time, which can be very, very frustrating as well. So yeah, let's head back to the pit lane though, and I'll talk you guys through the setup. Well, having a look then at our setup figures, 2419 for your front and rear aero. Again, you know, we are kind of experimenting with some slightly more aggressive wing presets inside this game, but because of the wet conditions, obviously, you want to have weirdly, you want to have slightly more straight line speed, because it means managing the battery in races. Obviously, you don't lose as much time. Very, very easy to make up a couple of extra tenths in the corners by being a bit braver. Very, very difficult to try and make up a couple of tenths in a straight line. So 2419 is the wing angle that works for me. If you're really, really struggling with it, I would up it to say 2724. But on the other hand, if you really want to try and run it quite risky, I would bring it down to like 2016 if you're feeling very, very brave here. 125 though on your on and off throttle diff. Again, completely standard inside F125. Minus 3.4, minus 1.9, 0.02 and 0.13 for your camber and toe angles. Again, pretty much exactly the standard that we run inside this title. 36.6 for your front and rear suspension. A little bit more extreme than we see at a lot of other venues. And the same can be said for the anti-roll bars. 616. Very soft front, obviously very firm rear. Again, just the inverse of what you do with the suspension. And then 2451 for your ride height as well. Again, as I've said before, with the wet conditions, you kind of want the car to be pitched forward slightly. But there's quite a few aggressive curbs here, and especially in the rain, you want to have that little bit of extra ride height to stop, you know, to help with the car wheel spinning as well there. So just be careful with it, but you should be okay. 55.97 for your brake bias and pressure. Again, fairly standard stuff for the wet setups. Not as extreme as what we were running at Austria last time out. This circuit, there's not as many lethal braking zones or anything like that. There's just not that many braking zones around the Silverstone circuit. 27 front PSI, 22.3 rear. Again, will just allow you to obviously manage the tyre temperature a little bit better, but will still give you the grip that you need and obviously the traction on corner exit, especially on those rear tyres. Of course, in wet conditions, it should be a fairly simple one-stop strategy. You do not want a two-stop Silverstone at all costs. The pit lane just costs way too much time, so that would be what I do as well. But yeah, hopefully this setup helps you out. As always, if it has done, please do make sure you leave a like, get yourself subscribed, and we'll be back very soon when Formula 1 returns to our final wet setup guide out at Zandvoort.
Drop to P2. Excellent lap. We're all very, very pleased with that one. Nice work. Come on, I'll see you back in the pits.